Today's story will be about time travel. If you're familiar with Einstein's theory of relativity, then you already know that time is relative. It can speed up or slow down depending on factors like velocity. In other words, time doesn't flow the same for everyone and can actually be altered. Sounds bizarre, right? But what if we could bend time, not just through physical means, but even with our minds? Is that really possible? Well, during my research, I came across a scientist who claims it might be. Vadim Alexandrovich Chernobrov was the founder and leader of the Kosmopoisk organization. He was a ufology and mystery enthusiast, as well as a meteorite hunter. He conducted experiments which were supposed to involve time travel, starting in 1987. In August 2003, Vadim Chernobrov conducted a groundbreaking experiment that stunned the world. In this experiment, he supposedly slowed down time in the lab by 1.5 seconds. In 1987, Vadim graduated from Moscow State Aviation University. Despite graduating from a prestigious school, he focused on studying the field of mysticism after graduation. His main research areas included topics we often talk about, such as aliens and time travel. However, Vadim is best known not for his research, but for a strange encounter. According to him, in 1985, an old man approached him and introduced himself, saying, "Hello, I'm a person from the 23rd century. I have something to tell you." At that moment, Vadim's first reaction was, "Oh no, I've met a madman." He responded dismissively, "All right, if you're really from the future, why are you telling me this?" The old man replied, "Because you are the only person in this era who will believe me. In the future, you will study time travel and write a book called The Secrets of Time." Vadim was shocked, as he had always been interested in time travel, but had never shared this with anyone. Yet this stranger not only knew about his interests, but also predicted he would write a book. It was truly incredible. After this conversation, the old man told Vadim a story from the 23rd century and even mentioned that the landscape of the Earth in the 21st century would change. Since the old man accurately mentioned Vadim's interest in time travel, Vadim decided to listen to his story. The old man introduced himself as Yevgeny Yosifovich Gaiduchik and began his story from the 23rd century. "Although this time has not yet arrived for you, it is already in the past for me. I was born over 300 years after your time. When I was 13, I was in love with a girl 2 years older than me. She was very beautiful. One romantic afternoon, we decided to embark on a time travel journey. In the 23rd century, time travel was no longer a secret." Yevgeny emphasized again that time travel was no longer a secret in the 23rd century. "Does this mean that humans have already mastered time travel technology?" Yevgeny continued, "Originally, it was supposed to be a wonderful trip, but as we passed through the 1930s, the machine malfunctioned and we accidentally arrived in the Soviet Union of the 1930s. Both the girl and I were injured. After a quick first aid treatment, I checked the machine and found that its positioning system was damaged. This meant the rescue team wouldn't know which time period we were in. Fortunately, the machine could still operate, but it only had enough energy to transport one person. We weren't even sure if it could return safely to the 23rd century. But we thought that even if it couldn't make it all the way back, it could at least get close enough to send a signal to the rescue team. So, the girl left and I remained. Soon after, I became ill due to an infected wound and ended up in a shelter. I had always believed that the rescue team would come, but months passed and there was still no news. During this difficult time, a kind couple took me in, and I finally had a home. Although they treated me well, I initially hated the place because everything was so primitive. The only thing that brought me joy was when I first rode a bicycle. It felt special, as all transportation in the 23rd century no longer moved on the ground. I later found a library where I met many now famous authors, though at that time they were just young unknowns. We became good friends, and I started telling them about my real identity. Initially, they didn't believe me either, so I began predicting future events, like the start of World War II in 1939, and how Germany would break its non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union. My bold claims eventually caught the attention of the Soviet military, who suspected I might be a German spy, spreading rumors to cause panic. So they imprisoned me. It was at that moment I realized that knowing the future could cause me trouble rather than help me. So, I decided not to reveal future events openly. Vadims later found out that Yevgeny became quite famous in prison. Bear in mind, not many people in that era could read. Yevgeny not only knew how to read, but also spoke English, and he often read newspapers to other prisoners, earning their respect. Interestingly, his fellow inmates confirmed that he didn't talk about future events during this time. In 1941, when Germany broke the treaty and attacked the Soviet Union, everyone was shocked, except Yevgeny. Because of the sudden onset of war, the Soviet Union released some prisoners to fight, including Yevgeny. Remarkably, despite the fierce battles, including the Battle of Stalingrad, Yevgeny remained largely unscathed, earning him the nickname the Lucky One. After the war, Yevgeny married and had a daughter named Svetlana. He told her many bedtime stories, including The Wizard of Emerald City, a book that wasn't published until 12 years after Yevgeny first told her about it. He also hoarded food, predicting future famines, which came true after World War II. In 1960, Yevgeny moved his family to the remote Zhermanovsky district in Russia. He told his daughter that the 21st century would see a massive flood that would reshape the world, and their location would be one of the few places above sea level. He also mentioned that humans would establish colonies on the Moon and Mars, and even discover extraterrestrial life. In 1974, Yevgeny founded a museum to preserve newspapers, magazines, and other historical materials, believing that it might be one of the few places to preserve human culture after the Great Flood. He hoped that this would also serve as a breadcrumb trail for the rescue team from the 23rd century to find him. In 1999, Vadim fulfilled Yevgeny's prediction by publishing a book called The Secrets of Time in his native language, in which he documented their meeting. After this, Vadim continued to research on the topic of time bending and time machine, and published his book about this crazy encounter in 2007, called UFO Secrets, Mysteries, Sensansi, which is still available on Amazon. Guess the encounter with Yevgeny must have affected him a lot. A couple of years later, Vadim conducted a controversial experiment, which supposedly bent time by 1.5 seconds. His research was reportedly based on generating specific electromagnetic fields that could alter the flow of time within a confined space. Chernobrov claimed to have constructed a machine that could slow down or speed up time for the person inside it. The concept behind this experiment seems rooted in ideas involving torsion fields and scalar energy, which are debated in scientific circles. In one experiment, Chernobrov supposedly managed to slow time down by 1.5 seconds per hour. The key principle of his device was the creation of a magnetic field that could influence the passage of time relative to the person inside it. However, mainstream scientists are skeptical, as there is no clear scientific basis to support the notion that electromagnetic fields could directly impact the flow of time as described. Nevertheless, his work has garnered significant attention from those interested in fringe science and time manipulation. This is not the craziest part. The craziest part is that recently, the researchers from Russian universities actually took his manuscripts, researched on them, and turned them into actual machines for experiments and wrote papers about it. Take a look at these screenshots of Dr. Alex Frolov's experimental setup referencing Vadim's research. I'll leave a link for this research online in case anyone's interested. The credibility of Chernobrov's experiments remains under debate, but his research taps into long-standing human curiosity about time travel and the alteration of temporal perception. Of course, some psychiatric experts believe Yevgeny was simply mentally ill and that his encounter with Vadim was just a coincidence. What do you think? I don't think the story is that far-fetched, considering how much time Vadim invested on the topic of time travel after his encounter with Yevgeny, unless he totally dreamt of this person.